it does restrict your ability for an upgrade. Has it been a while since your rate study was updated?
It's underway right now.
Last year.
Oh, okay.
Last year, it's
And
being,
this year again.
it's being updated, and there was action to, I think there was an increase in rates, if I remember correctly, last year. And the study points to further increases, but the council hasn't acted specifically prospectively for those increases.
Okay.
But they'll come up again. That's why I asked that before, too.
Yeah, yeah.
Sometimes it's prospective, in a group of years, and
Yep.
those increases.
Yep.
Other times, it's incremental each time, and I guess that makes a difference to the underwriters.
It does, yeah, and it just depends on, I guess, what your future capital improvement needs are. But again, probably the two most important factors from my standpoint would be, number one, striving for debt service coverage of 2 times or higher, and number two, a cash balance that's equivalent to 6 months or greater of annual expenditures. And that cash balance includes all your reserve funds, except your bond reserve fund. So if you may have like an ER&R reserve, a contingency reserve, maybe a capital reserve, so we can roll all those into that cash calculation. So I'll go quicker here. Page 12, again, there's only one bond insurance company left standing, that's Assured Guarantee. Even Warren Buffett's company, number 9, Berkshire Hathaway, which only considers bonds of $100 million or more, was downgraded from AAA to AA+. So, quite a change that has occurred. Page 13, again, we're still in a great environment. When you look at the interest rate chart, it's almost like there's this unspoken resistance level at 4% as far as this chart is concerned. But, we're still looking at a number of bonds to refinance, and it's still a very attractive time. The outlook is that, it's likely that rates will be higher in the future just due to inflation and the national debt. So keep that in mind. We're hearing out there that construction bids are coming in 30-40% below budget. So there's a number of municipalities, despite the economy that we're in, are moving forward on projects to take advantage of that. I have looked at your outstanding debt. Right now, there are no significant savings on the bonds that we talked about earlier, but I'm going to look at it again too, because rates have been dropping this week. There's what we call the bundling concept, so that when you're looking at a new money need, whenever you issue bonds, you always have these transaction costs with an underwriter, a bond attorney, and others, the rating agency. So you want to minimize the number of times you go into the bond market, but also you want to sort of look forward the next 36 months and say, okay, are there any other new money improvements we can include with this? Can we refinance our debt? So you bundle all those together and achieve economies of scale with reduced financing costs by having one issue as opposed to 3 separate issues.
Can you traditionally bundle them regardless of the revenue stream that pays them back?
Yeah, you can only bundle the ones that are related to that revenue
So
stream.
similar.
Yeah, yep.
Back to page 5 on debt capacity. Suppose we borrow $4 million from USDA
Sure.
for water system improvements. Does that show up as part of our debt capacity anywhere on this chart?
No.
Thank you.
We still have to consider cash flow and whether we can make the payments. of
Right,
course.
right, yeah.
Right,
But it
right.
doesn't count against our bonding capacity.
Right,
Exactly.
because it's not secured by any tax revenues.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Questions from?
So I guess related to that, I'll just volunteer. So if you were to compare a USDA loan to a bond, the USDA loan will achieve, if you qualify, it'll achieve a lower interest rate. I think right now they're quoting like 3.5%, we're quoting in the neighborhood of 3.7, 3.8%. But, you know, if you qualify, it's a longer process for approval, and whereas a bond, you can, the process typically takes 2 to 3 months, and you can take advantage of the current construction bidding environment. So it just depends, I guess, on what you're looking for. USDA loans can be financed, you know, up to 40 years, which is great, whereas a bond, the maximum term is about 30 years. But if you're looking at 1.5 million, yeah, I would suggest focusing on 20 years or less. There are some, we recently refinanced, and USDA is a great program. We recently refinanced a USDA loan for the city of Chelan. They just wanted to get out of it because they, for their staff, they did not like the annual reporting requirements. So they called me up one day and they just said, get us out of this, we want to refinance it. And so we are still able to get them interest cost savings. There's less than 10 years left on it, but it's just something to keep in mind.
One other question about bonds, at least in my mind, bonds typically have very fixed payment schedules, either semi-annual or annual, and there are substantial penalties or even prohibitions against paying it off early.
For a bond,
Right.
typically you have a 10-year prepayment option, so that means the first 10 years are non-callable. If you have a specific circumstance and you think you really have a need to exercise an earlier prepayment option, then we can work with you and maybe do a 5-year prepayment option. However, that increases your interest rate by about 0.10% to 0.20%. So if we're quoting you, say, a 3.8% 20-year money, and you want a 5-year call date, now it's going to be 4%.
That flexibility.
Right, but there will not be any prepayment penalties. And so if you go with a bank, you have to be careful and look at that, because I recently issued bonds for a fire district, and yeah, they were pretty shocked when they found out they had a $165,000 prepayment penalty. It was,
So you can bond against indebtedness of the city, not just against a project.
right, yeah, I think the focus really is the payment stream. Is it going to be secured by taxes, revenue, or assessments?
I've never looked at bonds that way before. I've only looked at them on a per project basis.
Oh, okay, okay.
But in your case of, because I would look at it and go, okay, so we go USDA loan, we put in water line,
Right,
and 5 years later, we decide we don't want that. I wouldn't think a bonding agency would come in and want to pick up a used utility.
oh, we look at the security of the payment stream.
Which is the revenue.
Yeah, and as long as it's solid and the debt service coverage is there and the cash is there, then we'll refinance it. Now USDA, you cannot use USDA monies to refinance bonds.
Right, right.
Yeah, but you can use bonds to refinance USDA.
Debt, period.
Yeah, if you have the interest cost savings there, or if you want to change some covenants. For the city of Chelan, with all the staff changes during the life of the USDA loan, they didn't have adequate